In the earliest days of the cosmos, when the universe was young and order was still being carved from primordial chaos, there erupted a war that would shake the very foundations of existence itself. This was the Titanomachy, the 10-year conflict between the ancient Titans and their divine offspring that would determine not just who ruled the heavens, but the fundamental nature of reality for all eternity. This cosmic struggle was more than mere rebellion. It was the ultimate confrontation between two incompatible visions of divine rule. On one side stood the Titans, the elder gods who embodied the raw primal forces of nature in their most elemental form. On the other rose the Olympians, younger deities, who represented a new order based on justice, civilization, and the rule of law, rather than brute power alone. The origins of this titanic conflict lay in the twisted psychology of Kronos, king of the Titans, whose paranoia would ultimately doom the very dynasty he sought to preserve. Having gained power by castrating his own father Uranus at the urging of his mother Gaia, Kronos was haunted by a prophecy that one of his own children would overthrow him in turn, continuing the cycle of generational violence that seemed to govern divine succession. Rather than accept this fate with dignity or seek to break the cycle through wisdom and justice, Kronos chose the path of monstrous tyranny. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth to a child, the Titan king would seize the newborn infant and swallow it whole, condemning his own offspring to imprisonment within his belly. This act of paternal cannibalism was so horrific that it violated every natural law and divine principle. One by one, the children disappeared into their father's maw. Hestia, who would become goddess of the hearth and home, was the first to be devoured. Then came Demeter, future goddess of agriculture and the harvest, followed by Hera, who would one day rule as queen of the gods. Hades, destined to become lord of the underworld, and Poseidon, future ruler of the seas, completed this tragic procession of divine infanticide. But Rhea, driven to desperate action by a mother's love and fury, could not bear to see her youngest child suffer the same fate. When Zeus was born, she wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Kronos, who swallowed the deception without examining it closely. The real child was spirited away to the island of Crete, where he would be raised in secret by nymphs and protected by the Curetes, warrior priests who clashed their shields to mask his cries. Zeus grew to manhood in exile, nurtured by the goat Amalthea, whose horn would later become the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. He was educated by the wisest beings in creation, learning not just the arts of war, but the principles of justice and leadership that would distinguish him from his tyrannical father. Every day of his hidden youth, he prepared for the moment when he would return to claim his birthright and free his imprisoned siblings. When Zeus finally reached maturity, he appeared before Kronos disguised as a cupbearer, offering the Titan king a special drink prepared by the Titaness Metis. This potion was designed to cause violent vomiting, and when Kronos drank it, he immediately began to disgorge the children he had swallowed. They emerged fully grown and burning with rage at their father's treatment, ready to join their youngest brother in overthrowing the tyrant who had stolen their childhoods. The liberation of his siblings marked the beginning of Zeus's campaign to claim divine authority. But the young god knew that he could not defeat the Titans through force alone. The elder gods possessed power that had been accumulating for eons, and their mastery over the fundamental forces of nature made them seemingly invincible. Victory would require not just courage but cunning, alliance building, and the support of beings whose power could match that of the Titans themselves. Zeus's first crucial alliance was with the three Cyclopes, the one-eyed giants whom Kronos had imprisoned in the depths of Tartarus, along with the 100-handed Hecatonchires. These primordial beings had been locked away because Uranus, and later Kronos, feared their incredible craftsmanship and strength. By freeing them, Zeus gained not only powerful allies, but access to the weapons that would prove decisive in the coming war. The Cyclopes, grateful for their liberation and eager for revenge against their former captors, immediately set to work forging weapons of unprecedented power. For Zeus, they created the thunderbolt, a weapon that could split mountains and command the very forces of the storm. Poseidon received the trident, which could shake the earth and command the seas. Hades was given a helmet of invisibility that would allow him to move unseen through any realm. The Titanomachy, those 100-handed giants of incredible strength, pledged their military might to Zeus's cause. Each could hurl boulders with 100 arms simultaneously, creating devastating barrages that could level entire mountainsides. Their addition to Zeus's forces provided the raw, destructive power needed to challenge the Titans on equal terms. But not all of the Titans supported Kronos in the coming war. Several recognized that the old king's tyranny had become unsustainable and that Zeus represented a more just and enlightened form of rule. Prometheus, whose name meant forethought, used his gift of prophecy to see that Zeus would ultimately triumph and allied himself with the younger gods from the beginning. Themis, the titaness of divine law and order, also supported Zeus, recognizing that his cause represented a more just and principled form of governance. Her support lent legitimacy to the rebellion and helped attract other divine beings who might otherwise have remained neutral. Ocean and Tethys, the ancient powers of the world's waters, chose to remain neutral, recognizing the futility of opposing the inevitable change. When the war finally began, it immediately became clear that this would be no ordinary conflict. The very landscape became a battlefield as cosmic forces clashed with power that reshaped continents and boiled seas. Mountains were hurled like spears, islands were shattered by divine blows, and the sky itself burned with the fire of supernatural combat. The Titans fought from their stronghold on Mount Othrys, using their mastery over natural forces to rain destruction upon their enemies. Kronos wielded time itself as a weapon, attempting to age his opponents to dust or trap them in temporal loops from which there could be no escape. Atlas, the strongest of the Titans, bore the weight of the sky into battle as both shield and weapon, threatening to drop the heavens themselves upon Zeus's forces. Hyperion, the Titan of light, blazed with the fire of 1,000 suns, his radiance so intense that it could blind enemies and melt their weapons to slag. Iapetus commanded the fundamental forces of mortality and death, seeking to impose the ultimate fate upon gods who had never known such vulnerability. Each Titan brought powers that had been developing since the dawn of creation, making them individually superior to their younger opponents. But Zeus's forces had advantages that slowly began to tell in the prolonged conflict. The Olympians fought with coordination and strategy, their individual powers complementing each other in ways that created combined effects greater than the sum of their parts. Zeus's lightning worked in harmony with Poseidon's earthquakes, and Hades' ability to strike from unexpected angles through his invisibility. The Titanomachy proved to be the decisive factor in many battles, their ability to launch coordinated barrages of massive projectiles creating destruction that even the Titans could not ignore. Briareus, Cottus, and Gyges hurled boulders the size of cities with such precision and volume that they could reshape entire battlefields, forcing the Titans to constantly adapt their positions and strategies. As the war dragged on for 10 terrible years, both sides began to show the strain of prolonged divine conflict. The earth itself groaned under the weight of supernatural combat, its surface scarred by weapons that could cleave continents and scorched by fires that burned hotter than the sun. Mortal life, just beginning to emerge in this young world, was repeatedly extinguished and reborn as the cosmic battle raged overhead. The turning point came when Zeus realized that victory would require not just defeating the Titans, but fundamentally changing the rules of the conflict itself. Rather than matching force with force, he began to use the superior organization and coordination of his forces to isolate individual Titans and overwhelm them with combined attacks that exploited their weaknesses. The strategy proved devastatingly effective. Atlas, despite his incredible strength, found himself surrounded and unable to use the sky as a weapon without dropping it and destroying everything. Kronos, master of time though he was, could not manipulate temporal forces while simultaneously defending against lightning, earthquakes, and the coordinated assault of the hundred-handed giants. One by one, the Titans began to fall or retreat, their individual power insufficient to overcome the coordinated might of Zeus's alliance. Those who continued to resist found themselves facing impossible odds, fighting not just against the Olympians, but against the very forces they had helped to shape in earlier ages. The final battle took place on the plains between Mount Olympus and Mount Othrys, where the full power of both divine dynasties was unleashed without restraint. The earth split open to reveal the fires of Tartarus below, while the sky burned with lightning and supernatural flame. The very air became electric with divine power, crackling with energy that could annihilate lesser beings with its mere presence. Zeus, wielding his thunderbolts with divine precision, struck down Titan after Titan with bolts that could penetrate any defense and shatter any shield. Poseidon's trident caused earthquakes that swallowed entire armies, while his control over the waters brought floods that washed away his enemies' positions. Hades struck from darkness and shadow, his invisibility allowing him to attack where he was least expected. When the smoke finally cleared and the last echoes of thunder faded from the sky, the Titans lay defeated. Kronos, the once mighty king, was cast into the deepest depths of Tartarus, that primordial prison from which no escape was possible. Most of his followers joined him there, chained with bonds that could never be broken, condemned to eternal imprisonment for their opposition to the new divine order. But Zeus's victory was tempered with wisdom rather than mere vengeance. Those Titans who had remained neutral or switched sides were allowed to keep their positions and powers, recognizing that the cosmos needed their ancient wisdom and authority to function properly. Prometheus was honored for his early support, though his later theft of fire would complicate this relationship. Atlas received a special punishment that was both imprisonment and cosmic necessity. He was condemned to hold up the sky for all eternity, his incredible strength turned to the service of maintaining the separation between earth and heaven. This was not mere cruelty, but recognition that his power was needed for the stability of the cosmos itself. The division of the conquered universe among the victorious Olympians established the divine order that would govern creation for ages to come. Zeus claimed dominion over the sky and the role of king of the gods, wielding his thunderbolts as symbols of supreme authority. Poseidon received the seas and all waters, his trident making him master of both the life-giving and destructive aspects of the ocean. Hades, perhaps drawing the most difficult assignment, became ruler of the underworld and the dead, his realm growing larger with every passing day as mortal life multiplied across the earth. Though his domain was grim, his rule was just, ensuring that the dead received appropriate treatment based on their actions in life. The establishment of Olympus as the seat of divine power marked the beginning of a new age in cosmic history. Unlike the Titans, who had ruled through raw power and often arbitrary will, the Olympians established a more structured pantheon with defined roles, responsibilities, and a legal system that even gods were expected to follow. This new divine order was not without its own problems and contradictions. The Olympian gods proved capable of petty jealousies, personal vendettas, and abuse of power that sometimes rivaled their titanic predecessors. But they also established institutions and principles that provided stability and justice on a cosmic scale, creating frameworks within which both gods and mortals could pursue their destinies. The Titanomachy became the foundational myth for understanding the nature of legitimate authority and the relationship between order and power. It established that might alone was not sufficient for rightful rule, that true authority must be based on justice, wisdom, and the consent of the governed. The victory of the Olympians represented not just a change in management, but a fundamental transformation in the principles governing cosmic order. The war also demonstrated the importance of adaptation and alliance in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds. Zeus's victory came not from superior individual power, but from his ability to build coalitions, coordinate strategies, and adapt to changing circumstances. These lessons would echo through Greek culture for centuries, influencing their understanding of politics, warfare, and leadership. The aftermath of the Titanomachy established patterns that would govern divine behavior for millennia to come. The threat of imprisonment in Tartarus served as a deterrent to future rebellions, while the example of the Titans' defeat showed that even the most ancient and powerful beings were not immune to the consequences of their actions. Yet the war also created ongoing tensions that would continue to influence cosmic affairs. The imprisoned Titans remained a potential source of instability, their ancient power contained but not destroyed. Prophecies spoke of future conflicts that might release them, creating an undercurrent of anxiety that would influence divine decision-making for ages to come. The Titanomachy thus became more than just a creation myth or explanation for divine succession. It became a meditation on the nature of power, justice, and change itself. It asked fundamental questions about what makes authority legitimate, how societies should handle transitions of power, and whether revolution is ever justified against established order. For the ancient Greeks, the story provided a framework for understanding their own political struggles and social transformations. The triumph of the Olympians over the Titans mirrored the ongoing tension between old ways and new ideas, between traditional authority and innovative leadership, between the comfort of established order and the necessity of progressive change. The war's legacy continued to resonate through Greek literature, philosophy, and political thought, offering a mythological template for understanding the dynamics of social and political revolution. It suggested that change, even violent change, could be justified when existing authority became tyrannical or failed to serve the greater good. Modern interpretations of the Titanomachy often focus on its psychological and sociological implications, seeing in the conflict between Titans and Olympians a representation of the eternal struggle between different approaches to power and governance. The story continues to offer insights relevant to contemporary debates about authority, legitimacy, and the proper relationship between rulers and the ruled. In the end, the Titanomachy stands as one of mythology's great explorations of power and its consequences, a story that recognizes both the necessity of authority and the dangers of its abuse. Through the epic conflict between gods and titans, the ancient Greeks created a narrative framework for understanding the complex relationships between power, justice, and the eternal human struggle to create societies worthy of their highest aspirations.